Okay, welcome to the Stageleft podcast, lifting the veil on the music industry by telling the stories of those with a unique vantage point. On this episode, I chat to writer, producer, drummer, guitarist, vocalist, bassist, synth player and chaos pad lover, Kieron Pepper. As well as being live drummer for the Prodigy for 10 years, Kieron has worked with an enormous spectrum of talented musicians and is now even a member of the legendary BBC Radiophonic Workshop. Today, Kieron will be giving us an insight into how he's developed his skills as a musician and what it was like being a live member of a band at a time they were scoring #1 albums in the US Billboard chart. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, Kieron. How's it going?
It's going very well, thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. So one thing, listening to your material over the last few days, I just want to start on, is a lot of your stuff's very experimental, and I think that's something that you've kind of embraced in the past. You know, as a musician who's not experimental at all, how does that develop? You know, not many kids seem to listen to really experimental music at a very young age. So was that your parents' record collection, or is that just something that's evolved over time?
I think it's just evolved over time. It's normally just a reaction to whoever I'm working with or whatever I'm working with whatever kind of instrument or program I seem to work with. I just like to test the parameters.
Cool. And like, because obviously you're well known for being a drummer, but I believe that the drums was your third instrument that you played.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, the reason I ended up drumming was because I used to front a band. My first band I was in, I was a singer-guitarist and play keys every now and again. And the drummer wanted to leave, and I was more into being in a band than actually being a frontman. So I said, I've always wanted to be a drummer, so let's swap round, and that's kind of how it happened.
What age was that?
That was 17, 18.
Wow, so you started playing the drums about 17, 18?
Yeah, really late.
That is really late, yeah.
Yeah, and it's completely self-taught. I was self-taught keys and self-taught guitar, and I had a kind of a real vibe for the drums. I really liked. You know, the school equipment wasn't particularly good. There wasn't a drum kit, but they had like an old marching bass drum and a marching snare, and so you'd put the bass drum on its side with a coat over it and a snare drum, and then, you know, using beaters. I think they even had sticks then. They had like the foam beating, you know, the mallets. You could get a really good kind of sound out of that. And it wasn't until I realised that Jesus and Mary Chain used to do that live.
Really?
Suddenly became quite cool. Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. Trailblazer. What advantage do you think it gave you as a musician having played different instruments before playing the drums? Like, was that an advantage or a disadvantage? Or?
Yeah. I think because if you know music and if you know changes and you know chords and you can understand melodies and different parts of structures of songs, it really helps your communication with other people. So, and you can build stuff up and break it down and understand songs much better and serve the song better, you know, as a drummer, if you know the music, for sure.
When you first started getting into music and playing an instrument, so the first one was piano or guitar?
First was keyboard, because my grandma gave me an old reed organ when I was 9. It's one of those ones you plug in and it's got like a fan underneath it. It's like whirs and
cool.
It's really. I haven't got it anymore.
Still got it? Oh,
no,
man.
I don't. But
it's worth so much these days.
Yeah. I mean, it was really knackered, but had this really great sound. I've got it recorded on tape. But I've recently bought one for my last birthday. My partner's parents bought me one, and it's almost exactly the same sound. So I was buzzing with that.
Wow.
And it looks great. It looks much better than the old one. But yeah, I started on that. And then taught myself to play guitar because it was a lot cooler at school to be a guitarist than a keyboard player. And because I'd worked out the notes on the keys and I'd seen a diagram somewhere with the E, A, D, G, B, E, and so worked out that the frets were just like the keys, and you could work out the shapes. And if I wanted to play a D, I had to play a D, an F sharp, and an A, and I found that on the fretboard and made my own shapes. So often when I'm playing chords now, I don't play them the way that you get taught.
Really?
My fingers are slightly the wrong way around because I just formed it myself.
So you're holding a D chord there, I believe.
It has a D,
yeah.
But my E, I just play like that rather than sometimes they teach you to play it like that with the middle finger extended around, and I find that incredibly hard. The first understanding of music was singing a drone along with my mum doing the hoovering.
Right.
Because if you've got that, you know, going on, you sing that, you find the octave, you find the, you know, major, the minor, and you can do that as a kid.
Okay, and so like obviously when you started playing in bands, as you mentioned, and like the key thing that there's going to be a lot of young musicians listening to this. What specifically was it that, when was the moment that kind of transposed into kind of regular paid work in the industry?
When did it become professional?
Yeah.
Well, the first, we were doing gigs with the band, and that was never really professional. I suppose you'd call that semi-professional when you're in a transit van with your mates going up and down the country and going abroad and doing gigs. But it was pretty hand to mouth, and selling T-shirts to get the petrol money to get you to the next event, all that kind of stuff, and learning the hard way, So I suppose you would call that a profession, even though most of the time we were subsidising it with casual work at Royal Mail or whatever you could do to sort of bridge the gap. So what was the moment that did? Was it when you joined the Prodigy, or was it before that? when you actually kind of were. Yeah. When I got asked to join the Prod, that was in 1997, and I got asked to join for their UK tour. So I did that, and it was phenomenal. And to get that opportunity was just amazing, of course. And when the tour finished, I thought that was it, and I thought that was great. And I had a good chunk of money, obviously, from touring, and that was the first time I could really buy all my family decent Christmas presents. So I did that, and then after Christmas, I got a phone call saying, "Is your passport in order?" And I was like, "Why?" And I was saying, "Well, we're going to Japan and then Australia and then blah blah blah." And it went crazy. So that was, from that point, it became my career. Yeah.
What time to join 97 for them? That was when they were going pretty stratospheric.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're back at the top of the game again. I feel that last album was amazing. But yeah, Attack the Land was definitely a golden era for them.
Were you a fan of them before?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of my best mates, John Sherrington, he used to go to the gym and used to put the Jilted Generation album on. He used to say, "Oh, you got to check this out, it's amazing." It's just because of the energy. And that album was amazing, the Voodoo People era. So I got a phone call one morning, late 1997, and Liam Howlett was on the other end of the phone and said, "Hi man, it's Liam." And I'd just woken up because I've been working at the Royal Mail or something, and my brother's called Liam, so I was like, "Wait, alright mate, what are you calling me for?" Because I just thought it was my brother on the phone. And he goes, "Oh yeah, it's Liam." And we had probably about 20 seconds of confusion, and then suddenly realised it was Liam Howlett. So he asked, would I like to play drums? I'm like, yeah, I would, of course I'd love to play drums. Shall I pop round? And he goes, "Well, we're on tour at the moment." He was calling from Germany, and he goes, "Well, I'll fly back next week, so can you book a rehearsal room?" And I booked a room at Amber Sound and Light where I used to rehearse with Real TV, and got the kit set up and had the tracks. And I think I rehearsed to Breathe and Firestarter, maybe Their Law, I can't remember. This was just before they started the UK tour. I played, literally, it was like 16 bars of each track, and he was like, "Yeah, no problem." And I was like, "What?" I think it's because I was really locked in with the beats, and my fills were at the right time and tastefully done to the track. And at the end of the day, all he wanted really was someone that looked good on stage and was obviously in time. So I got the job, and I just could not believe it, that out of anyone they could, there's so many drummers that when I got that job, they were like, "Who on earth is that guy? Who is he? What's he done? Is he that good? I don't know." But there's people that really wanted that job, and I obviously got it, and I got the opportunity, and I knew that I had to make that happen.
So how did you approach that audition? I mean, that was make or break, like in many ways, in regards to
you know what? It wasn't that much pressure because I had that dialogue to Liam already, and I knew how he worked, and I knew that it had to look cool and sound cool, and it just had to be cool. And I thought, if I don't get it, it's nice to have been asked. Yeah. He was taking a bit of a risk by just getting some unknown drummer to be on stage, so it had to be right. And so I guess that I did the right thing at the right time. The band I was in before that was like a punk band, and I used to like playing beats. I was into dance music before anyway, so I'd try and bring dance beats into this kind of punk band. And some of them were pretty fast, with kind of drum and bass, so it's like 160, 170. Yeah. And so I was used to playing fast, and the band before we used to use samples, so I was used to drumming to a click. So I had experience of having to drum in the pocket with the song and grooving with often different loops that may have different varying degrees of swing. So you'd have to try and really listen and fit in within that. So Prodigy was very much like that. Even though there was not a click involved, it was just very, very good monitoring and, you know, great sound.
So you never played to a click in the Prodigy?
No.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Well, everything's to the grid.
Yeah, right.
Most of it's 4/4. Every now and again you get like 6/8 or some kind of
yeah.
You know, Liam would mix it up every now and again with some weird timings, but generally it was 4/4. So you know, if it's loud enough and you're anticipating the 2, not the 1, as in like the snare,
yeah,
you know, coming on to the 2. If you're anticipating that and you're locking in with it, and the sound's good, the sound's loud enough and good enough, then it's effectively just dancing behind a drum kit.
So often I think a lot of their stuff was obviously a lot of different samples all mixed in together. Was it down to you to kind of decipher them and kind of work out how you can complement them, or did you have to play exactly the part?
Well, you can't play exactly the part because you'd need 6 arms or something. Yeah, because Liam would take slices of different beats, different samples, a lot of program stuff, and sometimes there would be varying degrees of swing. Like if you listen to Their Law, there's a straight beat in it, and there's a real slinky beat in there, and then there's another swing thing that's slightly different, but together it just works. It's very, very exciting because of the mix and the way that it's all blended together. So in order to represent that, you've got to work out what you're playing out of all those things. It was my job not to make myself conspicuous by my mistakes or being over the top or doing stupid fills. I was very proud of the fact that you know, there was a blend of the live drums within the mix. They were always cool. They still are a very, very cool band because they don't compromise and they still do what they do.
What advice would you give to young musicians working with particularly big personalities for the first time?
Ask, and don't overstep your mark, and don't overstay your welcome, because it's very easy to get excited by working with people that are at such a high level. So do it with respect, and the fact that you've been asked to work with them means that you're obviously at a level, so they respect you. So yeah, but just be cool.
Like cool.
There's a couple of times when I wasn't cool. You know, I got very excited and you know, and it's very easy to get carried away with the whole thing. Yeah, the best thing about touring is obviously travelling to the places that you would never get a chance to go yourself, and staying at great hotels and meeting some amazing people from different walks of life. It really does humble you sometimes as well, especially underprivileged people.
Are there any pressures of touring that we don't see?
Yeah, I'm sure there must be video diaries or videos of people on tour when they're struggling, and obviously it must seem a little bit weird for people to comprehend that if you're away from normality for any period of time, or particularly more than 2 weeks, your mind tries to reset, and you can be a little bit wobbly. Yeah, I remember being in America for the first time on tour with the Prod, and it was really emotional, and they were like, yeah, it happens.
Yeah, there's the side of the industry that sometimes we don't see. Okay, let's move on. So obviously you've done lots of other projects. Working with the guys from Orbital, is it?
The Ideal Condition, which is an album that Paul did. He recorded it all, programmed it all with synths and stuff, and then re-recorded it all with the real instruments. So he got like cello and clarinet, and it was amazing. He basically, with the help of Chris Elliott, who's an arranger, they redid the album with all the right instruments. And then, funnily enough, it was just when I stopped doing the Prodigy. Completely polar opposites of
really
going really crazy.
Was it drumming or was it?
It was drumming, but it was like having to drum with a harpist.
Wow.
And
so how did that affect your playing?
So obviously in the first rehearsal they're just looking at me going, can you just shut up please, because I'm hitting them so loud. Awesome. So I had to learn the control. I've never been a soft drummer, I've always hit them hard, and thought that was the way, and obviously it's not the way, and you realise that you can get so much more out of a drum kit when you play with a bit more restraint.
Cool, and obviously it's all about bass. So bass are like, it's you and DJ Gordy, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, so tell us about that. What I'm actually interested in is, I've seen like footage of a couple of the times you played over there, and like the Russian kids are crazy for it and stuff. Like, how do audiences change as you go around the world? Can you think of any specific examples where, you know, where you've gone to different parts of the world and it's either hasn't gone down or it goes down particularly well, and why is that?
The way that it's set up with bass is we go to remote places that aren't really going to expect us, I think it's the way to say it.
Right.
And what we do is because it's a party band, we listen to their music they're listening to, we find different remixes, do our own versions of it, bring in music that we love, and also put in music that we're writing too. So, so there's something familiar about it, and also something very, very different, so they can enjoy the music they normally would listen to on that particular club night. But then I'd have a drum kit and a bass guitar and my sampler and a microphone, and we'd mash up things and do versions of, and just have fun with it and try and, you know, enhance the music a little bit visually and also with extra sounds.
Come and go.
I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it, you know, if it's not promoted very well, there can be not very many people there, and it can be a little bit disheartening. But as with anything, any band that you do, you've got to go for it and give it your 100%, even if there's two people standing there. Do you know what I mean? With those first bands that I remember doing, you'd be playing to the other band often, you know, and a couple of people that turned up if you're lucky. But if you don't go for it, then what are you doing? Yeah. You know, you're there to entertain or create or share something or communicate a feeling, then you've got to do it as if the room's full. You know?
That's a constant that has been through the Stageleft podcast. That's something that almost every musician on the Stageleft podcast has said, just go for it, no matter who's there, just put the same passion as if you're playing to 2,000 people.
Especially if you're doing a new band and you want to convert people, you want to get in someone's head so they wake up the next day and they remember that song and they want to introduce it out to their friends.
So one other band you were very much involved in for a couple of years that things went pretty crazy for was a band called Dead Kids. Tell us about that.
Okay, so Dead Kids was a band of brothers all on the road, going crazy and playing music and living it and loving it in every way we possibly could. And it was just a great experience, complete chaos and lots of fun. It was you were talking about being experimental earlier, and that was one of those bands where we could really try and push the boundaries. You know, we were trying to react against everything that we were listening to at the time and trying to come up with something particularly cool. And it was a cool band for sure, yeah.
And that took you around, you played gigs all over the place, and all of the coverage, everyone should check it out, there's videos on YouTube. The gigs are wild, like people coming on the stage and stuff like that. How much of that was kind of pre-planned, or was that just all spontaneous?
No, that, absolutely not. And I think if there was ever a thought that it was pre-planned, then obviously there'd be a massive reaction against that.
Yeah.
It was often, you know, the reaction to the music and to what was going on was very much came from Michael.
He's a singer.
Mike Title, the singer. Yeah, he's a very passionate human being, and he would react to whatever was going on in the room. And if there was people just being nonchalant and not really getting into the track, or if they're on their phones or any kind of aloofness going on, he would have to get involved with that.
What, challenge them to get...
Absolutely.
Really?
And so, well, why are they at the gig? Why would they be there? And so sometimes the reaction would be quite awkward.
Yeah.
And then other times it would be euphoric. Getting them to react to the music that they were listening to was really important to Michael. And to all of us, in fact. And it was a pleasure to be part of it. It was such a great band, yeah.
Clearly from the YouTube videos, it's like there was a real kind of thing going on there for a couple of years. You can see footage of the guys going crazy on stage, with loads of fans coming on the stage. So what happened?
It was one of those bands that burnt very brightly, very quickly, and then burn out. But I mean, I'd love to work with that guy again, because I think I'm addicted to working with really passionate frontmen, for sure. Yeah, he's one of them.
Into the fire, let her know. Into the fire, honey, my sweet. Into the fire, oh no, my love.
What's the last instrument that you picked up that was a new instrument for you?
I've got this BC8, a modular synth thing that my girlfriend gave me, which is basically manipulating sine waves, just like a synth, but it's like a little thing. I run that through the Chaos Pad, and that's fun. That's like in the same way as a theremin is fun. You know, sometimes it's not so accurate, but it's great for getting sounds. But in terms of musical instrument, I don't know. Because anything with the keyboard, you're following the same rules. Anything with holes, like a flute. I'm not really a woodwind player for sure, but I like getting a good sound out of a cello. It's quite satisfying when you're bowing it.
So you play the cello, yeah?
Well, no, I don't. I'll pick up any instrument and I'll get a good sound out of it, and I'll sample it, or I'll learn how to play it. If I need to do some kind of performance using it, then obviously I'll rehearse until I get it right.
So we mentioned the click track earlier. I spoke to actually a drummer in my band, and I kind of mentioned that I was interviewing you today. He kind of come up with like 3 or 4 questions that he wanted me to put to you. One of them is that does playing, perhaps not now, but when you were learning yourself, but does playing to a click track sometimes take the feel out of playing live? Do you feel restrained having to play to the click track and concentrating on that rather than actually...
You know what, with the click, especially in a live situation, or when you're recording as well, because it's the same thing if you want to sound convincing and you want to be tight, you've got to kind of forget about it. You've got to trust yourself with it, and because as soon as you're on with the click, it disappears.
Yes, yeah.
You know, because as soon as you can hear it, it's probably you're slightly out with it. But if you're hitting the drum kit hard, well, it depends on the mix, I suppose. You can have it blaring out in the cans. I'm pretty deaf from the amount of cymbal abuse over the years. Yeah. So when I've got a click in my ear, I need it quite loud. But it's going with the, you know, in a live situation, you've got to be ready for it straight away because there's no warming to it. You know, if you're well rehearsed, it'll be fine. But you can't be expected to jump into it if you haven't been rehearsing well, or you're not anticipating the BPM of the track. So you've got to use it to help you. But you can push and pull within it. And if you're in a situation where it's just you that's got the click and no one else has, but they're just listening to your drums, then of course it's easier because even if you go slightly out with it, you can relax and slow to it, or you can speed up a little bit to get yourself back in.
Red light syndrome, it's kind of similar kind of area of psychology and music.
I'm getting better at that. The red light fever, yeah, for sure. I used to I could hardly breathe sometimes when I knew I was about to be recorded.
Really?
Yeah. But it depends on what the situation was. This was very early on. This was in the days, because it's changed so much, because these days if you're going to record a track, you know, if you're doing it to a click, you can, you know, you do your verse part, your chorus part, some fills, and you can stitch it together later, you know, so it sounds great. If you're going to, you know, whether you're a dance band or whether you're recording a rock band like Nirvana was recorded when they were doing Nevermind with Butch Vig. You know, that's all loops.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have to prove the fact that they can play like that because they can. It's just like you get the best sound, so they use loops. But so I don't get it now because I know that we can just stop and start, and it's not tape that we're using that's really expensive and running out.
If it was that situation now, and you did have tape, and it was kind of being timed, and you playing
I probably
for
would because
time.
I'm now because the reason I'm thinking back now is to when I used to do. We were doing a session with Real TV, and the first single we recorded was with Rat Scabies from the Damned, drummer from the Damned.
Oh wow, yeah.
He had a studio under Kew Bridge, and he used a Fosbeck 16 track, and maybe it was running 2, I can't remember, but it was quite basic, but a lot of fun, and he was hilarious and really cool. But he would not drop you in, he would not bounce you in. So if you'd recorded the track, and if you made a mistake at the end of the song, right, the last bar, you have to do the whole thing again because he would refuse to drop you in.
Good on him.
You know? And I remember being in tears after one of them. I was like, "Oh, you do it! I can't," you know.
Really?
Yeah. You know, just hating myself for not being able to do it. So the red light fever there, or it was like, right, we're recording. You'd get, I'd get the sweats, you know. And when you're doing live stuff as well, when you're playing radio or TV, and they say 5, 4, and they just count down the numbers without saying it, and then suddenly you're there, and you've just got to do a basic time beat, you know. If you were playing Billie Jean, even that would seem hard.
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah. Well, if you let it bother you, you know.
Yeah.
When it's live, you know. That's
different for a job, because a classic thing for red light syndrome is when the producer says, "Oh, we'll just do a take, we're just having a little practice run," that kind of thing, and you end up doing it and go, "Oh yeah, that's fine, we've got that now," you know.
That's the way. That's the sign of a good producer, knowing how to deal with something.
Yeah. Okay, a couple other questions from my drummer was, we're recording this the week after the 5th Terminator film came out, so I don't know if this has influenced him in any way, but do you see electronic drums replacing acoustic kits in the future? Do you see that kind of going that way in 30 years' time?
It's a bit of an ambiguous question. It's like what for? Because if it's for live, it all depends on the stage and the environment and whether the drummer demands satisfaction from something being hit that's very, very loud. I mean, you could have a totally all electronic drum kit plugged into amps behind you, which blasts the sound out, giving you the same kind of satisfaction, I imagine. It's all personal. It all depends on the band and it depends on the drummer. And I think for me, I always have now when I'm doing projects, I'll have some way of having some kind of electronic element to it, whether it's triggers on the kick and snare, whether it's a SPDS drum pad, or whether it's some kind of other device for me to hit and trigger sounds. Because I like to be able to play my kit and it sound good in every environment. So if you're playing a really small venue with a basic PA, if you can at least have some extra help there in terms of sounds that have already been recorded and sampled and processed, so the beats sound really tough, even if they're quite quiet. It can blend with an acoustic kit. That for me is the ultimate. But I think it's to do with taste. I don't think they're going to replace, but they'll definitely be used in different ways and in different formats as people get more and more creative and more technology comes forward.
Which leads me nicely on to your involvement in the Radiophonic Workshop, which is, as many listeners will know, well known for kind of experimental music and kind of music concrete and taking that on. Tell us how you got involved in that and how you find playing in that.
The reason I got involved was because Cliff Jones, who used to be in Gay Dad, I used to teach. I used to teach with him in BIM Bristol.
He never used to play with an E string on his guitar. I used to saw him Brixton Academy, and he used to play with 5 strings. Yeah,
right. That's like a Keith Richard thing, isn't it? Yeah. Really cool guy, and I get on really well with him. And he went to do some work with BBC, and ultimately ended up working with Radiophonic Workshop. And they wanted to take it out live and do some shows. They'd already done this thing in a quarry. I think that was when Delia was alive, actually. Or just maybe when she just died, I'm not sure. It was around that kind of time. And then they did a gig at the Roundhouse in 2009. And so he was asking if I'd be up for drumming for them as they brought this show to the masses, doing festivals and bespoke gigs. And it was an honour to be asked, because I've always been into that kind of way of making music, and the Dick Mills Radiophonic Workshop was something that was rattling around my head from the age of 9 or 10. I'd see stuff on TV, whether it was Blue Peter or Magpie, or they were doing something. I think the Magpie thing was when Peter Howard was doing the Doctor Who, the 80s version of Doctor Who, and seeing him use those synths was massively inspirational, and hearing how they made the TARDIS sound, scraping the key down the piano, all those things was very, very exciting. And I've always been recording sounds on my tape player, then a mini disc player, then a dictaphone, and now my iPhone. I've got that constantly getting sounds and sources and feeding it into my music. Yeah. And so to be asked was a great honour for sure.
the key bit of advice you'd give to a young musician?
Tenacity. As in sticking with it.
Yeah.
You know, and believe in it. If you really want to do it, you can do it, for sure. You just got to surround yourselves with the right people. And knowing your strengths and your weaknesses, I think, is very important, because if you know your strengths, you can just leave that alone and be happy with it. If you know if you look at your weaknesses, you can decide whether you want to make those better, or surround yourselves with people whose strengths are your weaknesses. Do you know what I mean? So you can then be in a great situation with great people that can help each other out.
Yeah, final question. Where do you see the music industry in 30 years' time?
Oh, wow. Well, the way the music industry is at the moment is like people just want to share their music. The artists are making less money out of music at the moment, but it's whether if they're comfortable with that. You know, people around them can help them make money, or make money for themselves. But if something great is being produced or made or written, then obviously it's human nature to want to share it, and there's also human nature to want to celebrate it. So if you're writing good stuff and you want to share it, whether people are paying for it or whether it's free, that's going to continue to happen. And if something's good enough and it spreads throughout the masses, then obviously people are going to want to see it. So the need is always going to be there, and that goes back centuries to someone writing a good song and everyone gathering around and listening to it on a lute or whatever. You know, I don't think it's going to change that much. Format is going to change. I'm sure some rules will be brought in to try and save copyright, or to help artists make more money, which would be nice. But I think a lot of the way that bands and artists make money now through pledge campaigns and stuff like that, there's a lot of support and a lot of love from the people who like their music, so they're happy to give money in a certain way to help that artist keep going. So it can be self-perpetuating with backup and with communication. It's how you communicate with people as well. I don't use Facebook and I don't do any of that, so it's like, I think I would be massively flawed if I wanted to get my music out to the masses, but I don't really care about that. But I think there's people, if they want to do that, then they obviously have to play the game, and the game is forever changing, for sure.
Right, cool. Thanks for joining us, Kieron, on the Stageleft podcast. Really enjoyed your company. Really interesting to hear what your views on being in the music industry for a number of years. We look forward to other music you've got coming out. Keep that tenacity going, and thanks for joining us.
No problem.
To keep in the loop of other episodes of the Stageleft podcast, go to www.thestageleftpodcast.com, follow us on Twitter at The Stageleft Pod, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Stageleft Podcast. See you next time.